Step into the realm of mystery with Paranormal M. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to keep up with our latest enigmatic stories. We hope you enjoy the ride. My experiences as a skeptic. Those damn apartments. Growing up, I didn't know if it was spirits or ghosts or if they were real. My mind was open to the idea, but I'd never experienced anything to believe it. Anyways, I was 23 when I first moved out of home to my first apartment. I'm 28 now, so this was some time back. I will say that living there for the most part was normal, but on a couple of occasions there were some moments that sent chills down my spine. The first time I was chilling with my lady friend. We were just laying on my couch watching a movie or something, and the kitchen was small, so looking at the TV you can see the whole kitchen. I had a cheap trash can with a lid top and it spins. So, to dispose of the trash, you just throw it in. We were just chilling. At the corner of my eye, I see the lid spin a few times, as if someone slapped it to make it spin. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. My lady friend asks me like 10 seconds later if I saw that. I was like, holy shit, I wasn't tripping. We investigated the trash and nothing. At first, I thought a rat jumped into it or something. We didn't have a rat problem, but I had no idea what else could have done that. In short, we had no idea what the hell it was, and we were quite shook for a while. The second moment made my heart sink. I've never felt that feeling ever since. So my girlfriend would come over, and, well, this was after my lady friend. I'm not a cheater. She, among a few other of my friends, always told me my apartment had a bad vibe. Like the energy in there was dark. I didn't think much about it. Anyways, we had these two stuffed animals. We won them at a claw machine in our local arcade. After time of her feeling uneasy, for some reason we both concluded that those stuffed animals just gave off bad vibes. She removed them off the bookshelf and put them in my kitchen cabinet before I left to work, just to put them away for the time being. Keep in mind, I dropped her off at her house. She didn't have a key to the apartment and always double-locked it. Fast forward, we get back from work. Decided to take a nap. I laid on my couch, and the way I was laying, the bookshelf was in front of me a bit to the left side of the wall. At the time, I was having a lot of sleep paralysis, and I still do from time to time, but in hindsight, I did experience a lot of sleep paralysis in that damn apartment. So of course, I'm waking up in sleep paralysis mode. My eyes are open, I'm unable to move. I look and all I see are those two stuffed animals sitting in the exact spot that they were. My thoughts were, what the fuck? How the hell did those things get back on there? It was impossible for those things to get back on that shelf unless they walked their asses back, which is obviously impossible. Or is it? My heart sank into my gut, felt my skin crawl. That feeling of unease just took over my body. After I was finally able to move, I called her and asked if she could put them back before we left the apartment. She swore up and down that she didn't. She couldn't believe what I was telling her, as we were both in disbelief. So, I disposed of those two stuffed animals in a big trash, and this time I was certain that they would never pop up again. I still consider myself a skeptic, as I never again had any other experience with what I believe is paranormal. But the couple of times I did, it was at those damn apartments. Actually, I had a friend who grew up in them. She told me that they were definitely haunted, and she's seen and heard things there too. Anyways, sorry for the longer stories. Hope you enjoyed listening to them. Cheers. Cheers back. Girlfriend saved me from a sleeping entity. This happened a few years ago, but still freaks me out. I believe in paranormal stuff, obviously, but I have a healthy skepticism. In high school and college, I went on a number of haunted tours in my home state of Louisiana. Never had any experiences, just a healthy interest in ghost stories. Moved across the country to Ohio. I moved in with my girlfriend at the time. Let's call her Anne. We'd been living together for about 2 years. Anne had some awful exes, and so despite sleeping in the same bed if I moved, or hugged her in her sleep, or even if I got up to go to the bathroom, she'd always wake up. She was a very light sleeper. It got to the point I suggested that we get separate beds, but she didn't want to be close, so we didn't. Or she wanted to be close. Another note is I have aphantasia. That's meaning most of the time I don't see stuff when I close my eyes or dream. Sometimes I have a lucid dream, but it's rare. I go to sleep and I dream, and in the dream, I'm in my childhood home sitting on the couch gazing out the window. It's snowing and the snow is piling up in the front patio. That's when my cat Boo appears outside. Boo's been dead for a number of years, but I loved her so fiercely I struggled to get a new pet. Still hadn't got one even then. In the dream, I even knew she was dead. I was moved to tears at seeing her. Jumped up from my seat, rushing to the door to let her in. But just as she came in the door towards me, my girlfriend appeared behind, screaming at me, then ran forward and picked up the cat and threw her forcefully out of the door and slammed it shut. The cat landed in a pile of snow and ran off. But notably, the snow began to rapidly melt in the spot it landed. It was like the cat rapidly melted away as it ran. So I snapped awake. My heart was going a mile a minute, and I know I screamed, but Anne didn't even wake up. Which, only freaked me out more. I shook her awake, but it took me almost a minute, and she was sluggish. Almost like she'd been taking sleeping pills. She slurred her words out, and before I even said anything about my dream, she rolled over like she was annoyed at me and said, "Ugh, Cat, you never invite dead things inside." Then she went to sleep again. When I asked her about it the next day and told her about the dream, she was stunned, but admitted that she'd felt really tired and didn't even know why. She didn't experience the dream, but she didn't seem surprised when I told her about it. Just sort of nodded and said she didn't remember saying that when, she did the night before. But you never invite things into your dreams, especially if you know it's dead. I didn't even know that she was into supernatural stuff, but somehow it hadn't come up in our relationship before that. It's been almost 5 years since then, but every now and then I remember it. It freaks me out all over. Everyone feels our former home has a presence. To begin with, I don't believe in any of this. But with that said, I'm definitely at the stage. I'm familiar with this stage. Now, the odd thing is about this tale is that we built the home in question. There were no prior occupants. My wife and daughter will firmly state that our entire time living in that home, something was amiss. There were always doors opening and closing, chairs moving. In particular, my office chair made a very distinct sound when rolling across the hardwood floor, which they swear they heard frequently when in the rooms beneath the office. Thought I was home numerous times when I was not. Of particular note, my daughter has a friend who considers herself empathic. She was always at her house. After a year plus of that, she confided that she loved being at her house because we weren't alone there. My wife swears that once we were on our way on business and she heard me come home early one morning, stomp about, enter my office, move my chair around. I was pissing her off by not announcing my presence nor responding to her. I stood in the bedroom doorway before turning away. Of course, I was still 2 days from being home, but the dog would react to all this, which really set my wife and daughter off. Pretty routine, right? Well, we sold that home 6 years ago. Moved to a tourist destination. A few months ago, the mother of the person who bought the house asked my wife if anything odd ever occurred there. She stated that herself, the other mother-in-law, and the owning wife have all had recurring incidents. They all have them convinced of an active but harmless haunting. They state nobody mentioned our experiences to plant that seed in their heads. I'm 85% that my house is haunted. The thing is, I'm the only one that'll actually admit something actually off. My house used to be an ice house back in the late 18th century, and then later an apothecary. You can still find the old bottles in the river. That's if you dig down deep enough. We lived here for 15 years, and I've always felt off in the basement. Can't really explain it. Just kind of a sixth sense that tells me something's not right. For the first 10 or 12 years living here, I can't really remember anything happening besides that feeling. Then right before I went off to basic training, I've had 3 separate encounters in this house. The first one being the most bizarre, in my opinion. I was down in the basement playing around at my computer. That's when I felt something fly by my head. It hit my ear and then fell onto the desk, preceded by footsteps going up the stairs. First, I thought it was my dad playing around. Went up to my parents' room and asked my mom to get her husband. That's when my dad jolted awake and asked, "What do you mean?" My mom woke up and was able to confirm that he was there the entire time. Took them back downstairs into the basement to tell them what happened, and look for whatever hit me. What hit me was a little 1-inch piece of plaster. My dad said, "I have no explanation. The piece fits perfectly in a spot in the wall directly behind me." My second and most notable encounter I actually got on video. I was sitting on the couch in our living room watching, TV, and everybody was out in like a sports event or something. I have a screen door and a glass door to my left that leads to a porch. A little into my movie, I started hearing knocking, like soft knocks at times and then heavier ones. There's no tree branches near my porch, and the screen door has no way of touching the glass. I opened the curtains, no one was there. I then started recording. In the video, I talk about hearing the knocking, and I'm kind of freaked out at this point when you can clearly hear 2 distinct rhythmic knocks. I then called my buddy, asked him to pull his car so it covers one exit from my backyard while I go to the other just to make sure no one's messing with me. Well, there's absolutely nobody there. We went inside, and I was telling him about it when it knocked again. This freaked us both out, but after that, it completely stopped. We spent the rest of the night watching Jackass together. That's a warm way to end a story. Not a dream. When I was younger, 8 or 9 years old, I lived in a very poor community right next to a cemetery. A neighborhood kid named Desi had become really good friends with us. Sometimes, but was a gang member. Always in trouble with the police and always bullying and fighting everyone. However, since we were next door neighbors, his family knew mine, and I think he was nice to us because he didn't want problems within his circle. Desi was something else. Let me give you a few examples. One time in the middle of spring break at around 10 at night, we had to make a late-night errand. While getting into our vehicles, we saw Desi in the road in front of the house frozen, just standing there with a clown mask on. Didn't even move. I looked out and noticed him 15 to 20 minutes before we left. When we drove off, he was still there staring. He didn't budge. That was one vivid, weird moment I remember him doing. We had an abandoned house on the opposite side of Desi and his family's. And I also remember him inviting me to welcome spirits and demons into the abandoned home. He wrote down some satanic words and poems on a sheet of paper, folded it up, and slid it under the front door, which was locked. The following day, we were having dinner one night. I explained to my family what he had done. They wanted me to stay away from them pretty much completely. Yeah. Although he was the way he was my only friend at the time. So I got upset and started talking back to my mom. Something inside of me that I could explain consumed me. I lashed out, even cursed at my mom. Keep in mind, I've never in my life considered to even talk back to my mom, let alone a curse word. So I ignited a huge argument within the house. My mom started blaming my dad as to why I was being the way I was, and they had a huge argument. They went their separate ways that day. They didn't even talk. We had a bedroom with 2 beds in it where we would all sleep. Me, my mother, brother, Jacob, dad, everybody. So one of the beds was right in front of the doorway in the hall that led to the living room. My mom slept in the bed opposite of the hallway with my brother Jacob, and my dad slept on the living room floor, leaving me alone in the bed in front of the hallway. I was asleep with foggy eyes and felt a weird coldness just consume my body, so much so that it startled me and woke me up. I remember looking at a window or box fan while opening my eyes, and when I turned over, I saw something I'll never forget in my lifetime. It was a tall being. The head was near the ceiling. That's 8 or 9 feet. From the waist down, it has thin legs resembling that of a goat. Hands were like wings. Face was completely solid black with yellow eyes being the only thing that illuminated the face. It also has hair only around its neck, similar to that of a lion. It just hovered looking over me for a few seconds, and it turned around, stomping, and took off fast-pacing into the living room and immediately jumped back. I couldn't believe what I had seen. I know for a fact what I saw was not human, and wasn't fake. Not a dream, it was real. I remember pinching myself to just make sure I wasn't in a dream, and I was shocked. I was so scared I didn't go back to sleep, and this happened at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I tried slipping into my mom and brother's bed crying scared, and my mom pushed me off the bed and told me to sleep alone because she was upset with me. I tried explaining to her what I saw while crying, and she said, "God is punishing you." Grabbed my arm and put me in the bed alone. Went back to lay with my brother Jacob. I was so scared. Didn't even want to look down the hallway for fear I'd see it again. Stared at the window box fan for hours, eagerly awaiting daylight. I was so scared I didn't go to sleep until around 9 or 10 a.m. when we had breakfast. In my head, I was questioning myself. I was thinking, am I seeing things? Am I hallucinating? Was I imagining things? And as I'm there thinking, my dad calling me and my brother Jacob out firmly, and they told us, "I don't know who was running in the hall in the middle of the night, but you don't have any business being awake at that time," threatening to ground us if we did it again. It was at this moment I knew that I saw something real. It happened 30 years ago. Never seen anything paranormal or scary since. I remember it so vividly. It always lingers in the back of my mind. Till this day, I will never forget what I saw. Advice, help. What to do when being haunted. I put some trigger words into the title to hopefully help people who are searching for advice. This is just a quick rundown on what I think a lot of people don't understand about what to do to help reduce lifelong or short-term issues with hauntings. I just wanted to write this as a basic guide to understanding and helping those who are facing problems with paranormal entities. First, you have to identify what it is. This might take you to the core of your belief systems. It may shake you, it may break you down, and, well, this alone is not helpful for whatever you're dealing with. You must accept psychologically that your initial worldview might not be the correct one. Could be a trans-dimensional entity. And land energy, like demonic, discombobulated human spirits, even yourself. The most important part, arguably, is how you approach it emotionally. It's, of course, going to be very difficult, next to impossible for most people to approach these happenings with a neutral emotion. The last thing you want to do is to feed it. Depending on the kind of haunting it is, you'll have different degrees of success. I'm approaching this as an American on American soil. America is a very haunted place for several reasons. I can't discuss other lands except to say that they also certainly have their own latent and energies created by a number of possibilities. Land energies can be neutral but potent. They can be created over a long period of human or other habitations, or caused by human magic alone. An extreme case would be a skinwalker curse. You don't stand a chance against true Native American magic. You at best can make it, lay low, depending on what it was created by, but it will periodically spring up again. Similarly to some demonic presences, if you don't treat it like a staph infection, you just constantly be clearing and clearing. The issue with this treating demonic and dark presences consistently like a wound is that it will get infected again. The goal is to kill it or to send it away, severing the line of connection or harboring protection around you utilizing a number of methods. It requires you to ask for assistance spiritually from the beings and persons who are designed to help you. Call them ancestors or otherwise, but please call upon these figures and create a relationship with them. They want you to create a relationship with them after all. Potentiates what they can do when you're connected to them, and it's very strong. Ask for assistance from the true healers and spiritualists in your area and online. Distance healing is real, and also a good resource. Confirm their intentions and abilities with your own intuition, and their reviews and recommendations. Ask them to come to your home. Have them perform sacred cleansings as many times as needed. Bring over somebody who can identify what's in your home or land. Learn from them. Heal your spiritual body and mind. Use the healing modalities of the globe. Use them to strengthen your spiritual body. Learn to harness your energetic field. Fill it with positive energies and learn to form a barrier, a protective barrier around you. You must learn to feel it and extend its proximity outside of your body to fill the clear rooms, your home, and the land around you. You want to fill it with the utmost divine light presence. Become anchored in a connectivity with whatever divine forces that you can. You will learn so much, heal so much, yourself, the world around you. Take control over your safety and self. We only truly experience such a small amount of their limited perception. It's akin to taking a self-defense class. These are tools everybody should have and are so important for the human experience, and these skills extend far past this life. Take care and be well. Strange occurrence after a night of paranormal deep diving. To give you a bit of background, I'm a man in my mid-30s. I'm happily married to my wife of almost 3 years, together almost 10 years. We own a nice little duplex in a suburban part of Buffalo, New York, where we live peacefully with our 2 dogs and rent out the other part of the duplex. Our rental unit has been vacant for a couple of months while we continue to update, facelift, fix some things. So as of now, it's just my wife and I in the house with the dogs, of course. We're both pretty open-minded people, but for the most part, haven't really experienced anything that one would call supernatural or paranormal. That being said, I consider myself to be a bit more sensitive than the average person when it comes to energy and vibes, be it with people, animals, or places. Our house is about 100 years old. While we've never experienced anything too crazy, I get the feeling that there's some kind of spiritual presence in the house. I often experience strange smells. And not only that, but I hear unexplained knocks. Generally have a sense that we're not alone. Anyway, this particular experience happened to me just a few nights ago on the very early morning of June 29th. I've been out of work for 2 weeks due to surgery. Because of the pain, either sleeping in our bed or the couch, depending on what's more comfortable. This night I felt the couch to be more comfortable, so that's where I slept. Much of the day prior to that evening, and into the night as well, I spent on my phone, perusing certain subreddits, including this one. And for no other reasons other than finding the topics interesting and having a heightened interest that day for something spooky. While reading through experiences and viewing creepy photos, I had an interesting feeling of wanting something to happen. As I've said, I've never experienced anything in my life that I would call blatantly paranormal or supernatural. But this particular day, that feeling of wanting to experience something took over. Further into the evening, my wife arrived home at around 9 p.m. after working a long day, joined me on the couch while we watched the Netflix documentary. We watched The Devil on Trial. At the end of the documentary, I jokingly made a comment, something to the effect of, so exorcism and all that's all bullshit, which I don't actually believe. I was just making that comment in more of a direct correlation to the fact that the documentary pointed out Ed and Lorraine Warren as scam artists and took advantage of people. After that, my wife took one of our dogs and went to bed in our bedroom. I stayed on the couch. After my wife retired for the evening, I turned on the show, A Haunting. I did this as background noise and continued reading various posts of experiences in the subreddit and other similar groups. At around 1 a.m., I turned off the TV, put in my earbuds, sleep mask, put on some binaural beats, which I've been going to bed with for the better part of a year now, as they help me sleep and stay asleep. My other dog lay in the ottoman next to me, with arms outreached, and I lay back slightly upright to sort of ease my stomach pain with my left hand on my dog. Slowly but surely, I doze off. I begin to have a strange dream. Can't remember what it was about, but I remember it was very strange. Not disturbing, I don't think, but just odd and perhaps supernatural in nature, as I often have these types of dreams. At around 3 a.m., I wake up and I've moved from my upright position to a more fetal-like position with my legs twisted and over on the ottoman next to my dog's bottom half. I felt something with my foot, something hard and scratchy. I reach down and pull out from under my foot a small piece of wood. At the time, I must have been half asleep still because I didn't do anything, but the piece of wood on the end table laid back down and I just continued sleeping. That morning I wake up and I sort of forget about the experience until my wife and I happen to be sitting on the same couch. She's on the phone with her mom. I look over at the end table and I show it to my wife. "We gotta talk." She makes a confused face and says, "Wait until I'm off the phone." Mind you, I didn't recognize the piece of wood, and my only rational thought was that maybe one of her dogs brought it in from outside. But as practical as that could be, it'd be highly unlikely as to them literally never bringing in anything from outside. They're very good boys. Not only are they good boys, but they're clean, they never get into things around the house and never destroy stuff or pick up things they shouldn't. Nevertheless, I asked my wife about the piece of wood. She explains that it looks like a piece of wood from one of her decorative bowls or vases. Sure enough, that's where the wood came from. The piece of wood was also exactly like the others from the decorative vase that sits at the top shelf of an old hutch that's my wife and that belonged to her great-grandmother. I asked my wife if she put the wood there to mess with me, to which she swears she didn't. My wife doesn't lie, let alone joke about things like that. If she would have done it, she would have admitted to it. The vase is far out of the reach of the dogs, and no one else has been in the house for months besides my wife, myself, and her animals. In conclusion, I'm convinced that this was something sort of paranormal or supernatural. Really can't come up with a logical explanation for it. The question is, after being in our house for almost 5 years, is this the first time something like this has happened? An interesting piece to this is that the hutch on which the vase sits, it's mostly dedicated to her past loved ones. The shelves contain mostly books, and the rest is filled with pictures and sentimental trinkets from our deceased relatives, including my mom, who passed away tragically about a decade ago. My grandpa was very close with, and my wife's grandparents. Was one of our deceased relatives attempting to communicate with me or us? Was it my mom saying hi? Was my grandpa trying to fetch with her dog? Was it some other unearthly presence in the house who didn't like the comment I made about exorcism and they felt the need to prove to me that this stuff is real? Who knows? My wife is definitely more freaked out than I am over this. I'm more interested than anything. Actually, I would like to sleep on the couch again and set up a camera to record in case something else were to happen. What are your thoughts? Seeing figures when coming out of sleep, but they're still there even once I'm fully awake. I have a long history of paranormal experiences, but I've never really indulged them as much because I get so scared. The last few months have been having this strange experience where I wake up in the middle of the night and I can see this transparent figure that's moving on the side of the bed where my husband sleeps. Even once I'm fully awake and my eyes have adjusted, it's still there, moving around. It often looks like an arm reaching toward me. I usually freak myself out, turn the other way, and try to pretend it's not there. I've talked to people who astral project, and they've said it could be that, but it also feels like it could be spirit energy of some sort. Any ideas? What should I do? Can't really react much as my husband and baby are always asleep in the room with me when it happens. My whole life I've had paranormal experiences, including a very intense and violent haunting in the old house I rented. And I've seen figures before, but they weren't transparent like this. I've tried to tap into that seeing, but I freak myself out every time. Any advance for learning into paranormal experiences, or rather leaning, instead of just instantly feeling terrified. I've been dealing with this for about 7 years now. So going back all the way to 2017, honestly, I may have posted before, I don't even really remember, but I lived in a trailer. My grandmother and my uncle lived in it originally. Staying the night there, I was always spooked. Anyways, so me and my mother moved in as well. There was a hallway I refused to go down unless I needed to. There were 2 bedrooms down that hallway. Both frightened me, but I was always afraid to go closer when I got into my uncle's room. There was a feeling I'd get, like no matter where I was, but it'd get worse the closer you got. I'd see shadow figures about the house, usually in my grandmother's room. You'd see other random things as well in the hall. But the worst part was that feeling and the feeling of being watched. That it was generally from one direction, the hall. If you go into the hall suddenly, it's from everywhere. Eventually, my uncle moved out. I moved in, my mother did as well. That was because I wasn't staying alone. I refused to. I hated that room with every fiber of my being. That's when I learned that while the room had both feelings in it, the closet was the worst area in the entire house. It just felt like it sucked the air from your lungs. I was about 11 during this. The family has always been spiritual, though most ignore and deny it. At that time, both my grandmother and my mother denied it. As time went on, I started having bad dreams about the trailer, but eventually it turned to lucid dreams. At the time, I had no idea what was happening. I had about 3 of them. They all generally started the same. My mother standing there before leaving the room, I'd get up to follow and then go lucid. The first and third time weren't too bad, but the second one is the one that bothers me the most. There was this thing there that I couldn't see but could feel. I knew it was trying to lure me out of the room, so I tried to get back to bed. I remember feeling it grab me, arms, legs, waist, anything it could reach, I guess. As I was fighting it, it lifted me off the ground. All the while, I still can't see it. I grabbed the door frame as it brought me into the hallway. I still remember the way it felt. The trailer itself looked odd, dark and discolored, warped almost. Dust idly floating around and gravity just didn't even work anymore. Ended up bringing me in front of a large open bathroom door. In front of the mirror on the door, disappeared off the back room. I looked into the mirror. I could see myself, but I could also see behind me. Eventually, I got a really bad feeling that if I didn't wake up, something really bad was going to happen when it came back. So I fought to wake myself up. After the 3rd lucid dream, I'd gotten an early birthday present from my great-grandfather, a dream catcher. I put it above my bed, and suddenly no more lucid dreams. Eventually, my mother and I moved out. Time passes and we're now living in a newer trailer. People keep giving me, dream catchers as gifts. I even got one of my own after learning that they stop the lucid dreams I get pulled into. Skipping to about 13 or 14, my cat at the time started destroying them. He liked the feathers, you know? I do. Anyhow, as my dream catchers dwindled, I got pulled into another dream. I got more dream catchers, was fine, they got messed with. Fast forwarding to about 16, I had another. This one was a bit different. Started off as a bad dream, and I felt it. I got into a car, and as I was doing so, I went lucid. I locked the car, and I could feel it standing there. I always know where it is. Would unlock the doors, and I'd jump back to lock them, and I missed one, and it got in. Then it tried to drive off a cliff. I managed to wake myself up before he went over. I had another one recently. I'm not sure if it was last year or this anymore, but it took place at my great-grandfather's house. It was also a bit different for several reasons. Dream me knew that it was there and kept avoiding the hallway, and eventually even started screaming at the hallway where it was going to go away and leave me alone. The screaming is what made me go lucid, and in a way I could feel its irritation. I fought to wake up, and I had learned as well that I had a dream catcher up there that had been messed with up still, but it had a painting, but hanging was damaged and dream catchers a no-no. What? There's another I'm not fully sure where it fits. I blocked it out. I was reminded as I got further down in typing. I don't remember quite as much as I once did, but got sucked into a lucid dream of my room, the room I still have now. Though it was set up how I'd had it before, changed it around, I heard and felt it coming through the door, so I pretended to be asleep. I heard it come in and felt it sit on the edge of the bed next to me. Felt it loom in to get close to me. Started talking about, well, generally, as I said, I don't remember as well anymore. How did I think I was going to know I was awake? Was I really trying to pretend? Taunting me, really? That was the first time it ever really spoke or even seemed amused. It started blowing on my face. I guess trying to make me react or open my eyes, I don't know. This year, though, I've had so many of them. I'm 18 now, and I had just a bad dream. I ended up going lucid. I was yelled at by one of the antagonists of the dream about leaving. He was incredibly angry that I'd started waking up. As stupid as it is, it scared me, so I forced myself to instead stay in the dream, which I regret, but More recently, though, starting yesterday, I've been dreaming about the original trailer. Now, mind you, before I get into those, the person who now lives in the trailer is a family friend, who said my uncle and his friends had messed with a Ouija board in his room before he moved in. He said none of them would talk about what happened. Frankly, none of them seemed to want to remember. But he also mentioned that it had gotten left in the closet. But back to the recent dreams. Yesterday, it had me and my grandmother going to the trailer. There was a horrible smell, make you want to hurt, rotten kind of smell. Nothing much happened. My dream self was cautious of the hallway and walking around the trailer. A dog threw up. There was 4 or 5, none of which that I recognized, and I woke up. This last one I woke up from today. It had me, my mother, my uncle, and his now husband. I remember being in the bathroom, and it looked different. I was uneasy, and I was quick to get back into the living room where everybody else was. Originally, I was standing near where my uncles were sat. Then these weird chime things started going off, and my dream uncle talked about how it happened, and not to pay attention to it because it was down there, basically. Anybody else slightly confused? Raise your hand. I had glanced back because I felt that similar feeling, but my dream uncle said that he don't look back there. Hadn't seen anything and hoped that it was a good sign. Got spooked although the longer it went on, so I went and sat on the other sofa by my dream mom, and my dream uncle started showing pictures on the phone of how they'd seen something down the hall before. I tried not to look, but even though I closed my eyes, I still did. Then the chiming or ticking or whatever got louder and quicker. My uncle, it's the dream by now, told everybody to feign being asleep and not to look. So we all did. I could hear and feel it around, hear it walking and messing with everybody. Then it got to me and it said something. I don't remember, but I mentioned that I wrote something after realizing a connection, and this is it. But then it started blowing on my face, like it had before, trying to make me react or open my eyes. I still don't know. I guess I flinched, though, and it got angry. The rest of the dream is random and generally had to do with avoiding being found by it. Some folks I know are worried something's attached to me, and it has been since being in that trailer. I feel like it's taunting me or trying to tell me something, or maybe both. Again, I don't know what it is. I won't say it's a demon or anything. I've had a few folks suggest it in the past, though. But I do know that it's something. I couldn't help you with that one. I I was a regular at a business that never existed. A few years ago, I would stop several times a week at a gas station on my way to work. It was nearly always the same attendant, and she and I would chat as well as greet the other regulars filtering through the day to the early hours of the morning. She knew my cigarette brand and would have them sitting on a counter for me when she saw me coming. A man would usually show up around the same time and grab a few energy drinks. We would exchange pleasantries about work or spouses and pets. Didn't always get gas there because I worked over the state line and it was cheaper on the other state. Around this time I went through a divorce, switched jobs, which meant that stopping at this gas station was no longer a part of my normal routine. Around a year later I was driving by the area with somebody and noticed that not only had the gas station shut down, but had been demolished and the area had grown over in a quick time. I said something about how the area had been naturalized very quickly. It was met with confusion. According to them, there had never been a gas station there. I inquired with several other people after this exchange, and they all agreed that there had never been anything built on this piece of land. I'm sure it was the right place. It's located on the main road right across from a shopping center. No mistaking the location for any other place. So what happened? Ghost gas station? Parallel universe? Glitch in the Matrix? I have no idea, but it's bothered me ever since. I doubt that there's an address. It's just a wooded vacant lot off of Queen Street in Martinsburg, Wyoming. It's close to the Dunkin' Donuts. It would have been around year 2013 or 2014. One of the people I'd spoke to about it was friends with the owner of the land. Said that there'd never been any development there. It may not have been a large town, but not so small that I'd ever seen the people there or every morning before and since. Yes, Gecko. Beyond knowing the guy that came in around the same time as me, an energy drink guy, I never got a name or anything. The cashier's name was something very innocuous, like Carol, possibly. The same person that said it had never been developed also told me that it was a popular cardboard village for the local homeless. True, you could see their tents, and the owner left it vacant, so they had somewhere to set up camp. I'm going to go check Google Maps and see if there's any information. And yes, to those who have looked, it's a wooded area behind the Dunkin'. It may have been King Street, not Queen. There's only 3 main streets, the other being Winchester Ave. It's definitely not Winchester. It's been over a decade and at least 3 banks ago. I can't look up any statements. At least, they would have been paper back then anyway. Most likely been using cash due to a controlling partner. Even if I had control of my card, which I wouldn't have wanted him to know where they were while I was buying anything, but it is Wyoming and a drug user or homeless encampment, so yeah, there's probably something weird happening there. Having been raised in the South, I maintain that the area of Wyoming isn't really Wyoming, but still the foothills of the Appalachians. So creepy stuff happens here. Oops. West Virginia. Oops. Many of you have found the vacant lot where the gas station was situated behind the Dunkin' Donuts across from the retirement assisted living home, the community gardens, or something like that. As far as I or the internet sleuths can tell, there's never been a business there. I don't really have an explanation for anybody. I'm sure of the location because it was a straight shot to 81 going to work every morning. Never left the main view of the road. Some have slightly cemented that this is where Queen Street becomes Edwin Miller Boulevard, but I think to myself and locals would probably still refer to it as Queen Street or North Queen Street till you get to Eco Lodge. And as I stated before, it's not a large town or difficult to navigate as long as you stay on those 3 main roads. So I'm leaving it there for now. I've known since the first time I noticed it had disappeared that it was something supernatural. Being an Appalachian native, we don't really question those things. I just wanted to share my experience and see if anybody else had any similar happenings. There it stands in the car headlights. I've only shared this story with those closest to me, but every time I go back to it, fear twists my gut. I get goosebumps and tears welling up in my eyes. Before I tell you about it, a little background on me. At the time, I'm 40 years old, married with 2 children. I enjoy walking, nature, in the mountains. I take photos when the weather permits. I'm not religious, and I try to hold on to a Cartesian thinking. This evening of August 22nd, 2017, all the indicators are green to go. I go to take photos of the Milky Way in the mountains, hoping to get some nice shots with fir trees, or at least trees. At 10 p.m. I throw my gear in my trunk and head up to a village 30 minutes away. Arriving at Bullet, everything's set up, but the weather decides to play a trick on me. The sky is filled with high-altitude clouds. It's not the first time, and after I look at the satellite animations a little further on, the sky seems more cooperative. I take to the road again, heading for La Creux de Vannes, a well-known geographical place in the region where I live. When I arrive near the parking lot that leads to the path to get there, I'm greeted by numerous flashing lights. Police, fire department, ambulance. Everybody's there. They're at the top of the mountain in the middle of the forest. I'm stopped and questioned about my presence. I explain why I want to go up there. The police explain that the site's not accessible and ask me to leave. I'm getting tired and I decide to go home empty-handed. That's for another time. Shiver runs down my spine. I've been driving through the forest for a few minutes. I then come to a clearing, driving slowly for fear of running over nocturnal animals. And there in my headlights, he's there. The side of the road, it's there. My eyes are riveted to his. I'll only see him for a few seconds in the end, the time it takes to overtake the car, and it feels like an eternity. He's tall, very tall, over 2 meters. He's also very skinny, sickly skinny, and his skin is as white as a full sledge, completely naked. He has a little black hair that's sort of tousled on his head. His arms are crossed over his chest, immense fingers dangling from the tips of his hands. He's covered in blood everywhere. He follows me with his eyes staring into mine. I'm overcome by primal fear. My whole body's screaming at me to flee, to get away as fast as I can. It's as if my survival instincts are begging me to get as far away from here as possible. By reflex, I mash the gas pedal and drive at breakneck speed to reach the edge of the lake and leave this forest that oppresses me. I keep looking to the rearview mirror, unaware of the danger I'm exposing myself to by driving at this speed. The tears of fear streaming down my face are absolutely uncontrollable. I'm terrified to the core, like a 5-year-old whose lights have gone out in the cellar. When I finally reach the edge of the lake, I pull over to the side of the road and try to regain my composure. Clinging to reality and rationality that's always built my life like a lifeline, I feel like I'm going mad. Thinking that maybe somebody had a car accident and was in distress, and I didn't stop to help. I hate myself for having reacted badly, for having been overwhelmed by unreasonable fear, so I call the police. I'm still breathing hard. Tell them who I am, that I haven't been drinking or taking drugs, and that they'll probably think I'm crazy. But no, they're benevolent and listen to me all the way. Finally get home, and my fear explodes into my belly. This look never leaving me. It's just piercing me again. Tell them what happened to me, and I start crying again. 2 hours later, at 3 a.m., the police ring my doorbell. There's 3 of them. They're obviously taking this very seriously. They ask me for more details about the time and place. Luckily, I know the place perfectly well. I give them the GPS coordinates of what happened. The next day, where I was heading, made 2 headlines in the local papers. 2 people had died there in the middle of the night in a micro-light accident. With no news from the police after several days, I contacted them and also learned that a carcass had also been found several kilometers away with no one at the wheel. But I'd done the right thing by not stopping. Never hear the end of it. I'm now 47. I've been back there many times, day and night. It's a place I love. I've always found it hard to believe in the supernatural, even though I'm convinced that many things go beyond our understanding of the world and shatter our certainties. I never liked this cemetery. My mom's father died when she was around 18. Ever since I can remember, she frequently visited his grave at the cemetery, decorating it and visiting it and so on. When I was too little to be left alone and my dad wasn't home, she would take me with her. Ever since I can remember, I've hated that cemetery. Being there always made me anxious, scared, and gave me bad vibes, whatever you want to call it. I'd always refuse to get out of the car at first, until inevitably being alone sitting in the car got too scary, so I'd get out. The grave isn't far from where you'd park your car in the pathway thing, so I could get out and join my mom easily. Because of this, there's a tree nearby between the graves and the road. Getting out of the car always made the feeling worse. Even if I was going with my mom, I couldn't wait to go home. This went on for years, till a few years ago. I was around 16, I believe. My mom told me a story that literally made my jaw drop. Hadn't got out of the car during that visit. When she got back in, she said, "You know, you've never liked being here ever since the first time me and your dad brought you as a baby." Then proceeded to tell me a story that made the whole thing make sense. Apparently, when I was a little baby, old enough to sit up on my own and such, my mom and dad took me to the cemetery to visit my grandpa's grave. I was sitting in the grass, happy and all. They were keeping an eye on me, but weren't like all eyes on me. I was looking up in the aforementioned tree between the graves and the road, and all of a sudden I started screaming, like I was being actively stabbed or something. I was terrified. My parents scooped me up, checked me over, and there's no ants or bugs on me in the ground where I was, but I kept crying until they left, eyeing that tree. I don't remember what I saw in the tree. I would have described it, but whatever it was scared me so bad it must have scared me or something. After she finished, it made so much sense to me why I never liked the place. I was always so anxious to be there. That'll happen. My friend's nephew got possessed. This happened when I was 16, staying with my best friend at an old plantation house. That's in Inverness. It had a very old shack out back in the property. We had been on the Ouija board earlier and afterwards. I sent a video camera on the staircase aiming at the Ouija board. After watching the recording, we noticed orbs coming out in the back into the Ouija board. Didn't even know about the orbs at the time, just thought it was cool. Didn't realize that we captured something very interesting. Really wish I still had that tape. But later that night at around 3 a.m., my friend's nephew, who's about 3 at that time, came out of his room walking in a daze. We asked him what he was doing. He didn't answer. So we asked again, but he said his name. He looks at us and says, "Izza, not Nicholas. My name is Samuel. I live out back in the slave house." This was not Nicholas's voice. He had never heard somebody speak in that slang. He then turned around, went back to his room, and went to sleep. Asked my friend if Nicholas had ever spoken like that, and he just slowly shook his head. We were freaked out, but not scared. Nothing ever felt benevolent. 42 now, starting to realize that my life is on a downward spiral to death. Honestly scares me. Just want to be with my family and friends again after this life. When I start to doubt myself about it, I just, remind myself about what I experienced that night. It hasn't been religion or anything like that that makes me believe there's something after. It was that experience that night. I know what I experienced, and I know that somebody entered back into our reality for just a couple of minutes. They had to be somewhere else. That's what makes me feel comfortable when thinking about death. I don't know if that would do it for me. Story. Just to preface, I'm pagan. I feel like that's important to note here, as it's the main reason for my interest in anything paranormal. I recently gained another friend, Lauren, who's also been practicing witchcraft for quite a while, so I was quite excited to finally have another person to talk about it with. We quickly realized that we shared a love for anything supernatural, ghosts, cryptids, anything of the sort. Decided we want to form a YouTube channel for ghost hunting, just generally anything otherworldly. We messed around with some spirit box apps for a while, wanting to get a taste of using them before sinking money into getting the real thing. We settled on an app called GhostTube. It seemed to be the only one that was legitimate. It had no repeated or pre-recorded sounds, and we could hear short bits of audio from local radio stations, which spirit boxes are supposed to, scan through. I decided we wanted to test it on my pendulum, something we both were very much believing had something attached to it. My pendulum is an old Catholic rosary I found years ago. I was at a wedding for a family member. I was walking to the building and I got the strangest urge to look into one of the bushes lining the entrance to the building, so I did. And there it was, this old, rusted, and broken rosary, tangled in its branches. Despite me being terrible for losing things, I've had it since then. I feel its energy strongly. I cannot make myself get rid of it. Other friends feel extremely overwhelmed or made uncomfortable by it, but don't want to hold it. Well, they don't want to hold it. When used as a pendulum, it gives negative answers to anybody besides me. We were sitting in another friend's living room when we finally decided to try and speak to whatever entity was clearly possessing my pendulum. And for once, the spirit box was completely silent. Besides the faint sound of static, nothing else was coming through. We had used the spirit box a couple of times before this. It had never been silent before now. There was always something coming through. I suggested that since the rosary was seemingly attached to me, they should try leaving the room and have me talk to it alone. They agreed. As soon as the door closed behind them, the spirit box immediately burst to life with non-stop noise. Couldn't make out a lot of it as there were sounds overlapping each other and it was a bit overwhelming. Finally, it went silent for a moment before saying emotional. I asked if it was talking to me or about me. It responded in the clearest voice I'd ever heard come through the box. No, not you. It was coherent and drawn out enough that it couldn't have been a clip of sounds from the box skimming through stations. I immediately called my friends back in and they walked in, with Lauren asking what it had said. As soon as they set foot back into the room, the spirit box loudly says, "Them." We all look at it in shock, and even more so for them when I explained what it had said before they walked in. After that, it went back to being silent. I didn't really feel upset, mostly just surprised. Despite that, I suddenly had tears rolling down my cheeks and turned cold to the touch. I know that sounds like some silly horror movie trope, but it happened. It was ice cold despite us being in a warm room in the summer with no AC. My friend Lauren wanted to go next, so my other friend and I left the room. After a few minutes, she frantically called us back in, clearly very unnerved. According to her, the spirit box wasn't really answering her until she mentioned me, to which the spirit box responded, "Ivy?" which is my name. She then asked for its name, and it started saying very slowly in an almost robotic way, "My name is," before being cut off by a female voice laughing, which is when she called us back in. It had all been a male voice leading up to this, which is why it was so odd. She said the voice absolutely felt malicious. She felt a chill go down her spine when it laughed. We all sat around attempting to speak to the female spirit, asking it why it laughed or if it could tell us its name. It said nothing until I said, "Well, you were certainly speaking fine when you were trying to scare my friend." I guess this got its attention as it then laughed again and then told me to shut up. We kind of laughed over this a bit, and it was finally my last friend's turn to go. When she was in the room alone, she essentially could barely get out a word out without, the spirit box was just telling her to shut up. She was trying to talk to the female spirit, but the male one was the only one responding. First, we thought it might have been malicious, but looking back, we think it might have been trying to stop her from speaking to the female entity. I tried by myself again, asked if the female spirit would tell me anything about itself. The only response I got was finally the woman's voice, and it loudly sighed before saying, "I'm over it." That was the last thing that was said. We aren't too sure which voice would have originated from the rosary, if any of them. I can only hope it wasn't the female one, as I certainly don't want that attached to me. But either way, it was certainly an experience for all of us. And so are those stories. See ya.
Is someone watching me? We've moved into a new house, and some odd things have been happening since we've been here. My wife is aware of activity, and she's walked into our bedroom one night to a black figure sitting on our dresser, looking in my direction as I slept. Nothing has happened since bar-smelling cigarette smoke every now and then, but we got that at our last place too. She told me earlier today that a couple of nights ago she woke up to see someone standing at the bottom of the bed, but to my right side. She asked, "What are you doing?" No answer, and this black figure walked from the wall to the door across the room and stood there. She said to it, "Do you realize I can still see you, right?" Then it went. I've not seen anything, but a lot is gone in my life, or a lot's been going on, rather. Main ones are a new position in my job, which is causing me to be exhausted daily. Also, this last week, my mom's come to contact with her biological father, who she's never met before. I was the one who dived into the history, finding her grandfather who passed, and then finding her dad. So there's a lot of emotion at the moment. Also, my dad's been having problems health-wise. A side note, a few weeks ago I had a dream. I had driven my car alone to a park, walked to a graveyard where I saw a woman pushing a pram and visiting a grave. I turned to leave her, and as I entered the park, a man was shouting, "Get out of here, you know you're not allowed here, right?" I asked what was going on. His reply, "The man who came in your car was trying to enter, but he's not allowed in here." I was alone in the car, so I asked who this man was. The guy said his name was Michael, my wife's father's name, who had passed away before I met her. He wanted to tell you everything was going to be all right. My thought within my dream was, WTF? Why is he trying to enter my dream? What's going on?